Hi, everyone, and welcome back to New Line Institute's Crime Beat Conversations. I'm your host, Rafaela Lipschitz, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Dr. Matthew Levitt. Dr. Levitt is the Froma Wexler Fellow and Director of the Counterterrorism and Intelligence Program at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Last year, Dr. Levitt launched the Iranian External Operations Interactive Map and Timeline, which is an online tool for tracking Iranians' foreign operations and attacks abroad. This map has revealed that since around 2018, Iran, the Ministry of Intelligence, and the IRGC has been increasingly reliant on criminal networks, particularly in Europe, to conduct these types of attacks abroad. Thanks so much for joining me today, Matt.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Matt, why are we seeing the Iranian regime pivot to these sorts of attacks and these sorts of partnerships with criminal networks?
So let's be clear, the pivot is in the use of criminal proxies. The pivot is not in the use of these tools, which go all the way back to months after the revolution in 1979. In those early years, the new revolutionary regime primarily used assassination, intimidation, kidnapping types of operations as a means to silence political opposition, deal with people who were prominent under the Shah, challenges to the new nascent regime. And over time, they kept this tool in their toolkit and used it fairly consistently over time in a variety of different ways against a variety of different targets. Now, we tend to lump these all in together, but the fact is, from the Iranian perspective, this is a tool that's being used in several different kind of siloed types of threats from their perception. They're used against dissidents, in particular dissidents abroad. Of course, dissidents at home too, but my interactive map focuses on their activities abroad. That one can expect, and in fact, based on the data we've collected, we can demonstrate that to the extent to which the Iranian regime feels threatened, feels that the revolution is threatened, the more threatened they feel, the more aggressive they're going to behave in terms of trying to silence their critics at home and abroad. They use these tools to target Israelis. They use these tools to target Jews who are not Israelis around the world. We saw cases in Germany and in France. A few years ago, we had the surveillance of a student Jewish organization at a university in Chicago. And then since the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, we've seen Iran targeting current and former US officials. The expectation now in the wake of the 12-day war between primarily Israel, but also the United States in terms of the attack on Fordo, is that maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but that over the horizon, the expectation is we're going to see Iranian attacks to exact revenge for the things that Israel and the United States did against Iran, to demonstrate that they're not down and out, and to try and exact the cost, in some ways create a deterrent threat against future type actions against Iran. The Iranians see this as a fairly cost-effective, certainly financially, but also politically, diplomatically, cost-effective way to reach beyond their borders and have impact, influence. And I think, to be perfectly blunt, they do it because they can. And what the international community needs to do is to exact a higher price. I was therefore pleased to see Australia say, look, when we see Iran engaging in activities hiring criminals to carry out attacks against Jewish institutions in Australia, we're going to not only PNG the ambassador, kick him out of the country, but we're going to designate the IRGC as a terrorist group.
So you spoke about the strategy sort of behind these kinds of attacks. I wonder, with this shift from using more official operatives to criminal networks and criminal proxies, how do you understand that relationship between these criminal groups and the regime? Do you see it as a merely, transactional and opportunistic? Is there the potential for long-term strategic relationships there? What's your assessment of that?
So first, the why. Iran has moved towards working with criminals because they are effective cutouts. These are criminal groups that are used to engaging in acts of violence. It's not like they have to be made comfortable with engaging in those types of activities. And these are groups that'll do things for money. So in some ways, there's a cost. There's no ideological bond. On the other hand, the money's good and their reputation lies on the line. And the organized criminal groups can then have levels of cutout as well. So for example, the Iranians, according to Swedish authorities, reached out to two different Sweden-based organized criminal groups that involve people who are either from the Middle East or Iran, and had contracted to them to have operations carried out in Sweden. At one point, one of those groups reached out to 14-year-old kids and paid them money to do something. The kids didn't know what they were going to be told to do until the very last minute. They were being given some explosive to throw over the wall of the Israeli embassy. Levels of cutouts. So the cost for the Iranians is you don't have that ideological commitment. The benefit is it's a little bit safer. There's more reasonable deniability. But let's be clear what reasonable deniability is. It's not that the Iranians don't want you to know that they did it, especially if they're targeting dissidents. They want the dissident community to know. They want them to be scared. They want them to be intimidated. They just don't want you to be able to prove it in open court, prove it in diplomatic channels. They don't care if your intelligence agencies know it. They're not even so concerned if the Swedes go public or the Americans go public or the Germans or the Danes go public, which are all actual recent cases. So long as it's just a press release, maybe some guy's arrested that is expendable, but there's nothing done against Iran at home in Iran.
Are there other risks to the regime with having a lack of that ideological alignment, whether it's with recruitment, whether it's with carrying out the actual attack?
For certain. There are benefits we've discussed. The big drawback is that you're giving law enforcement, intelligence too, but law enforcement, the ability to stumble upon an act of international sabotage, something that's typically an intelligence function, when they're looking at the criminal world. You're giving opportunity for law enforcement to have more tripwires that might identify what's happening. You have to assume that law enforcement is already looking at these organized criminal groups. And so the Iranians are taking risks with that. The assumption is that they're working with groups that have demonstrated capabilities that they think are likely to be able to get the job done. The Iranians don't need the ideological commitment as much because all the things that go into the ideological bit, the planning, the decision, that's done within Iran. It's the final get the job done. Pull the trigger, throw the bomb, or recruit someone else to do it that they're having the criminals do. That doesn't require ideological commitment for those groups. It's just show me the money. But it really does create opportunities for law enforcement and intelligence to identify these activities, not because of an intelligence function per se, but because they're looking at crime. And that's a very useful tool for authorities around the world. And it's, I think, the primary reason why almost all of these cases have been thwarted. Now, not enough of them have been thwarted because local or national law enforcement came across the information by virtue of following the organized crime groups. There's a lot more room for development there. A lot of it still happens because foreign partner intelligence agencies pick up on things and share with one another, as appears to have been the case, for example, in Australia. Right? There were communications that were intercepted. At that point, the Australians are able to go in and see what's going on, and they're able to investigate from an intelligence perspective, kind of top down, from a law enforcement perspective, bottom up. And that's why I think the Australians are so sure about their conclusion that the IRGC was behind these plots of intimidation against Jews in Australia. But it really does present law enforcement an opportunity and challenges for the Iranians when they go and outsource beyond their trusted ideological networks to people who are going to be involved in this for money, some of whom will be more skilled than others.
Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing these insights and having this important conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for tuning in to Crime Beat Conversations. Please be sure to take a look at our work from the Mafiocracies project below, and also find Matt's map linked below, and stay tuned. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.